JJK 262 leaks are here, but in case you guys didn't see my previous video, let me give you a fair warning. This chapter is only 7 pages long, and that's because Gege Akutami has not been feeling well. So in addition to this chapter being rather short, JJK will also be going on a 2-week break after this. So just wanted to prepare you guys with that going in, and with that being said, strap in. So the chapter begins exactly where we left off with Sukuna and Yuta Gojo, who I'm henceforth just going to refer to as Yuta, domain clash, Infinite Void versus Malevolent Shrine. And we see that Yuta immediately shrinks down the Infinite Void domain to the size of a basketball, just like we saw Gojo do back in his original clash with Sukuna. The next 2 pages are then a beautiful double spread of Gojo and Sukuna facing off in the domain, except Sukuna's Malevolent Shrine looks like this thing, the same like grotesque version of it that we saw a few chapters back when he opened it. And the narrator says that the solution Gojo came up with for Sukuna's open barrier domain was to shrink his down to the size of a basketball so that it could withstand the effects of Malevolent Shrine raining down upon it from the outside. This will give it about 3 minutes of uptime before it's destroyed. We then get access to Akotsu's internal monologue, and he's thinking to himself, if we take Sukuna's fatigue into consideration, then it's possible for me to withstand this domain for 3 minutes just like Gojo did. The narrator then chimes in and reveals that Sukuna has reduced his effective range so that the domain is just big enough to surround Yuta's barrier, and because of this, he has eliminated Malevolent Shrine's 99-second limit. He also reveals that before this fight, Yuta swapped souls with Gojo to train and improve his barrier techniques. We then get a full-page face-off between Yuta and Sukuna, and we get a bit of each of their internal monologues. Yuta is thinking, under 3 minutes, I'll damage Sukuna enough to where he can't maintain his domain. And Sukuna is thinking, I'll destroy Infinite Void in under 3 minutes, and then I'll expand my domain to take out everyone else. Next, inside the domain clash, Yuta tries to use a blue to pull Sukuna in. However, Sukuna just suddenly appears right in front of Akotsu and uses his 2 damaged arms to kind of pin him in place. Then with his good hand, he slams Yuta right in the face. And Akotsu is wondering how Sukuna managed to do that with Infinity supposedly up. And he realizes that alongside Malevolent Shrine, Sukuna is simultaneously using domain amplification to penetrate through the Infinity, which he didn't think was possible. Meanwhile, Sukuna has this evil-looking grin on his face where he thinks to himself, that's right, they couldn't see what was going on in the domain expansion when Gojo and I were fighting because the crows weren't in there. The scene then switches to a fully manifested Rika who is holding Yuta's lifeless body in her arms. But to be clear, this is Akotsu's original body, not Yuta Gojo. And Rika is just screaming Yuta. And that's where the chapter ends, with the editor's note saying, Rika, fully manifested. However, ... And the final panel on this page is a close-up of Akotsu's face, specifically his eyes, which are closed. And it also reveals that there will be a 2-week break coming up. And just to be clear, that means 2 full weeks off, and then it will come back. So it'll be 3 weeks from today before we get the next JJK chapter, which, if everything lines up, that means Leaks Night would be July 26th, I believe. There's also a little note about Gege feeling under the weather, and that's why this chapter was only 7 pages long, and then Gege himself comments and says that I'm not feeling the best right now, it's a bit bizarre. I'm sorry for the various inconveniences. Now, obviously, it's a bit of a bummer to have this shortened chapter and then head straight into an extended break, especially after coming off of a break week. But personally, I hope Gege just takes as much time as he needs to get to feeling better, whether that's 2 weeks or 2 months, because him feeling better means he's going to put his best foot forward for the end of this manga, and I think that's ultimately what everybody wants. So, King, get your health in check. We will be here waiting for when you're better. Now, even though this chapter was really short, it did provide us some really interesting things to dwell on for the next couple of weeks. And as you guys know, I'm going to marinate, I'm going to think on these things, and we'll talk about it more in further videos. But for now, one of the most interesting things is that Yuta Gojo didn't know about the domain amplification within the domain. Again, as Sukuna pointed out, because Meimei's crows weren't able to see what was going on inside of there. But Yuta theoretically should have had access to Gojo's memories, so he should have been able to see that moment from when Gojo fought Sukuna, right? So that's either a plot hole or the memories of the host aren't a guaranteed thing. We know that Kenjaku had access to Geto's memories, but perhaps that's because Kenjaku is, well versed in body swapping. Perhaps it has something to do with specific binding vows that he caught. Or maybe you only get access to the memories like after a certain time inhabiting the body. So I won't say it's a plot hole for sure, because there is potential that maybe just Yuta didn't have access to that yet, because we did find out that Yuta and Gojo swapped souls. So even if Yuta doesn't have Gojo's memories, that soul swap training could explain why he knows how to do domain and use the limitless and all that stuff. He would have had prior practice with it. Now, in addition to that, Sukuna's Malevolent Shrine seemed to be even more crazy looking now. It was basically this on steroids. If the previous version we saw was like somewhat manifesting, this looks like a fully manifested version. So what is the cause of this domain looking different? Like, I'm curious what Sukuna is doing. All we found out from the leaks is that he did change the parameters once again in order to shrink it effectively so that he no longer has the 99-second limit. And he can do that because Yuta's domain is the size of a basketball, right? So honestly, Sukuna's Malevolent Shrine is pretty small, but yeah, I'm just very curious about why it has all these bulging eyeballs all of a sudden. Now, speaking of that body swap, it is interesting that we did get hard confirmation of that, which means not only was Yuta in Gojo's body, but Gojo was in Yuta's body. And I'm not saying anything definitive or getting into any theory crafting here just yet, but it's just interesting that Gojo's soul was technically in this body before. In addition to that, something I talked about in my videos from the past week or so was about Rika and if Gojo Yuta would be using her. Well, we did see both of Gojo's hands and he is not wearing the ring. And in that final panel I alluded to, Yuta is wearing the ring. So I'm assuming that this fully manifested Rika is staying with Yuta's body to kind of maybe keep it going, under the assumption that if Yuta can successfully defeat Sukuna within the 5 minutes, that he can come back and swap back into his original body. That's the only real reason I can think of for why Rika wouldn't be by Yuta Gojo's side right now trying to help him. She maybe needs to be here to preserve Akotsu's body, but let me know y'all's thoughts on that. And then finally, y'all, in case you didn't see my previous video, this issue of Weekly Shonen Jump actually had a lot of JJK extras, and JJK was featured on the cover with Yuji front and center. But part of those extras were the results of the 4th popularity poll in JJK, and of course we have Gojo coming in at number 1, Yuji coming in at number 2, and Megami coming in at number 3. Now, the rest of the results, of which there will be more, have not yet been revealed, at least in the leaks. But when we get the full list, I'll let you guys know. But in addition to that, we also got the reveal of the Volume 27 cover, which will feature Takaba. And finally, Gege did a new color illustration of both Yuta Gojo and Sukuna kind of standing back to back. It looks really good. You guys can Google it if you want to see it. But anyways, y'all, that's it for this one. Again, real short chapter, but it had some interesting things to latch on to. So let me know all your thoughts, theories, and comments down below, and I will see you soon.